Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. We appreciate your interest in health and wellness. However, it is important to note that the content provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information shared here is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The hosts and guests featured on Everything's Messy podcast are not licensed healthcare professionals, and the discussions within the episode should not be considered as personalized medical guidance. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided by Everything's Messy podcast or its guests is solely at your own risk. This podcast may discuss general health topics, lifestyle choices, and wellness trends, but these discussions should not be interpreted as individualized medical recommendations. Every individual's health needs are unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another. We encourage you to consult with a healthcare professional before making any significant changes to your diet, exercise routine, or health practices. Everything's Messy podcast and its hosts are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information provided during the podcast. Remember, your health is a personal matter, and professional medical advice is essential for making informed decisions about your well-being. Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. Everything's Messy podcast brought to you by Dreamweaver Media. So, incredible company. I'm so excited that I've had the chance to work with this company. Let me tell you, if you are looking to level up your podcast, level up your business, anything that you need to get very clear and laser focused with your goals for your company, you need to reach out to Dreamweaver Media. They have a strategy session report that they will do for you. And what that will do is you will discover your dream audience persona, define your business's why, craft a brand identity that speaks directly to your target audience, identify your marketing goals, and create a custom plan and receive a detailed visual shoot plan that brings everything to life. Let me tell you, this company is amazing. So reach out to dreamweavermedia.co. That's dreamweavermedia.co. Check out their website for more information. Hey there, it's Sarah Wilson, and welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. Yep, you heard it right. Everything is messy because, well, it is. But here's the thing. In the mess, there's strength waiting to be found, and that's what we're all about here. My mission? To break the silence around chronic illness and build a community that's supportive, understanding, and downright empowering. So if you're ready to navigate the chaos, buck the conventional medical system, and embrace authentic healing, you're in the right place. We're going to tackle the big questions like how to balance it all, where the family fits into the messy equation, and everything in between. This is your messy space, a place where we're not afraid to get real, have those important conversations, and maybe even share a few laughs along the way. I'll be sitting down with incredible people, each with their unique message to explore their stories, experiences, and the lessons they've learned in the chaos. From unconventional healing methods to finding strength you never knew you had, we're covering it all. So grab a seat, get comfy, and let's dive into the messy. Because here at the Everything's Messy podcast, we're turning chaos into strength. Together, we're going to embrace the mess. Are you ready? Let's get messy. All right, well, welcome. I have Christy Fontaine today. Welcome to Everything's Messy podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you wanted to come on. So let's just jump right into the mess, right? Everybody has a messy story.
We are so messy, always messy. And if that's the theme, then I've landed at the right podcast.
You are at the right place.
I am at the right place. And oh God. So let's start back. We'll go in the way back time machine to like 2003. I was a 24-year-old single female working in my industry. I went to school for culinary arts, and so I was working in a kitchen at the time, and still very young and dumb and having fun. And
let's just really quick.
Yeah.
The culinary experiences, my own curiosity, is it as competitive as they say it is?
It can be, absolutely. And I think I had good resolve because as an industry across the board, most of the people are addicts, either to drugs, alcohol, or both.
And what do you think that is? I mean, just out of your own.
I think it's just, I don't know, but anybody listening that's in or has worked in many kitchens will agree with me that it's just, I hate saying bottom feeders because that's not what I'm getting at, but I'm just saying like, and I don't know how they ended up in the kitchen necessarily, or if it's just a, what's that word I'm looking for? If it's just a personality
Is it high pressure?
It can be. Yeah, it can be. And I just think that a lot of people fall into that pocket of leaning towards those extracurricular daily activities. And I just never partook in that. And yeah, I think, like I said, it goes back to my strong resolve. And yeah, drugs and alcohol never had a hold on me. So I guess I'm fortunate in that I never got messy in that area.
That's great.
Which yeah, I'm looking at my old self now. I'm like, wow, you survived. If I'm going to be 45 next month, and if I can say that I've never had or still don't have a drug or alcohol problem, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Because everyone's thick in my family too. Yeah, everyone's thick in my family. Um, my mom's brothers both were alcoholics, and they both passed away.
I'm sorry.
And yeah, and it's just, I think that it's just a gene, and I think some people get it and some people don't, and I didn't.
Are you
No
the first in
judgment
your
for those who do.
Yeah. Are you the first in your family to go to culinary school, or is it sort of in the family?
I actually grew up in a home. My mom took cake decorating a course when I was like a year old, and it stuck. So I grew up with a bakery essentially in my home. So it's kind of a funny story too. When I happened upon and how I happened upon culinary school, I'm just gonna jump off the culinary train for just a minute, is right out of high school, I was actually enlisted into the Army. And I was 2 hours away from boot camp. And they ask you three questions upon, getting ready to ship out to your destination is for females, I don't know how accurate this still is all these years later, but are you pregnant? Have you been sick, or have you gotten any tattoos? And I said, no, no, but yes. I had been sick. I was dating a guy right out of graduation who gave me mono. And if anybody knows mononucleosis, yeah, I got so sick.
Very sickly and very
Steroids. I lost a lot of weight. Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And from June when I graduated and I was supposed to leave mid-August, those 2 months I was so sick. And my recruiter at the time said, just, you're going to be asked some questions. Just do your best. If you have to lie to get through it, to get to boot camp, it's okay. You'll be okay. And I just froze. I just got so gun shy. Oh no, I was just thinking, oh God, these authorities are going to get to me, and I'm just going to get in so much trouble if they find out I was sick. So I fessed up and told them that I had been sick, and they said to go back out in the waiting room. And I sat there, and they called me back in and said, you have been disqualified, and you cannot force the sick. Yep, because I had been sick, and because of mono, I guess because your spleen enlarges and stuff, and it's just it's not like I had a common cold or whatever. And I don't know. This was 1997, so I don't know what policies are changed now. But yeah, so they didn't want me to go through basic training and have my spleen erupt, basically.
Oh my goodness.
So I remember going back home, tail between my legs. And at this point, all my friends had been, packing up or had headed out to college. And I didn't have a backup plan. And in my hometown was a culinary school. And so this was August. I still kept testing for mono well into probably October, November. And the doctor said, because I tried to get back into the Army. I tried to test back in, and my blood test kept coming back positive, positive, positive. And he said, you might hold a trace of it just long enough for it to be in your blood. So if you have other options, find them. So in my hometown, there's a technical college that has a culinary program. So I signed up and went that January. It was the spring semester. And going back to, I grew up with it. I had a spatula in my hand growing up. And I kind of relate the story now when I look back at it is I didn't put this together until recently, but when I went, it was into the baking mod. And most of it was boys or guys, young guys, and there was one other female. And it was fun. It was such a, there's a reason why things happen, and I'm so blessed that the boot camp never happened now. Because I
look at
really
it
cool.
did you look at it as rejection at the time, or was it more
I
the
don't
rejection
think I knew what that.
came.
Yeah, I don't think I really understood the premise of rejection at that age. I don't think my brain was formed around that yet. I just thought of, yeah, that's a good question. I think I just was just like, oh, whatever. We'll see what else I can do. Kind of rejected.
I'm always telling my kids rejection is protection. You may not see it at the time,
It is.
but in
No,
some way, you doesn't feel good, perhaps.
Yeah,
But then it's protection for you.
yeah, and I think all those years later, I think the rejection grew with me, if
Oh,
that makes sense. I think as the years went on and I had other missed opportunities, and I always fell back to what if? What if I had the ability to have been lucky enough to be in the army? That's what it was. And I always had that shoulda, coulda, woulda, or where would I have been? Where would have I gone? I kind of felt stuck in my own tracks. And up until just a few years ago, I just happened to go to the Army website, and they were taking new recruits at 42 years old. And I
wow.
was almost 40. Yeah, I was almost 43. I forget the age cutoff. I could be wrong. It might have been 41, or I just turned, whatever the age was, I just missed it. And I think if I had not missed the cutoff, I probably would have seriously considered, I got this, let's do it. I think it's just one of those things in my life that I just felt like I missed the boat on. Um, Part of me, there's part of me that, okay, what did you miss out on? And there's part of me it's just such a blessing. Um, because I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you about my messy story
Sure.
or my messy life, because it would have been a different messy life and I didn't get to see all those messes. So, and now it's okay. Um, so back to that first half of culinary school, I walked in, like I said, first semester was the baking mod. And I feel like looking back now, I was Harry Potter and didn't know it. How Harry went to cooking school and knew how to do things.
Sure.
And they just looked at as this big cake wizard because I was doing all these things and frosting things beautifully and making roses, and I could write on cakes, and they were just all like mouth open and, this ain't fair. Why is she in here? They were joking with a lot of love, but they were, it was the Harry Potter effect. I'm just like, it's not my fault. It's in my blood.
Sure.
So I started my culinary career, and I went through some internships, and really loved it because it's just second nature for me. And a couple years later, I worked at a little eatery, casual upscale dining. And I was blessed to have worked with some of the nicest people there. And it was an owner chef. He owned the restaurant, lived right next door. And I've been spoiled in that world as far as like working in really toxic free kitchens most of my career. And fast forward to me being about 23, almost 24 years old. Back segue to the beginning of the story is when going out with friends, having fun, and having a little bit probably too much fun, and kind of realized I was pregnant. Quietly, I was thinking, now this beer doesn't taste the same. This orange smells funny, and oranges don't smell bad, but the smell of an orange just threw me for a loop. Something's wrong here.
Very specific. Yeah.
Yeah, very specific. I still remember that. And it's funny how if you're a woman and you've been pregnant, I think each and every one of us have had a very specific,
Mm-hmm. You
problem.
know. Even if you don't know, you know.
So here I am. I'm single. I'm in my apartment, and I'm just like, like I don't need this. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I remember I had 2 days off that week, and spent a lot of time with my mom in those 2 days. And in those 2 days, it was the last of the 2 days off. I was just like, well, I guess I'll go home now. And she's like, okay. She's like, everything okay? I said, well, God, I haven't been feeling good. She basically had to drag it out of me. I was just such in a place. And she's like, what, are you sick? Do you have the flu? I said, no, 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 it's nothing like that. And then she looked at me, she goes, are you pregnant? And I said, I think so. I just turned back to that little girl feeling, oh, I think so. And my parents are like the most, and they're still married, which is probably rarity at my age, but they're salt of the earth, gems of people. So my mom whipped out the phone book at the time and said, okay. She called the doctor and booked me an appointment. The crux of the story is that I was not necessarily with anybody at the time, but had someone that, obviously hooked up with, and we weren't together, which leads me to my first messy bucket of life, was to ask a mutual friend for said guy's phone number because I needed to talk to him. And his response was, is he's really not looking for a relationship right now. And I said, we're way past that.
We have leveled up so far.
Houston, we have a problem. And if you don't give me that number, yeah, whatever. So, called the number, got voicemail, and said, hey, it's me. I haven't seen you in about 6 weeks, to be specific. If you can call me sometime, I really would love to tell you or talk to you. I forget the verbatim. So he had called back. This part's fuzzy. He must have called back or whatever. And long story short, he came to my little bitty apartment. It was during a snowstorm, sleeping on the couch. I hear a knock on the door, and it's him. He comes in and he sits down, and I just basically said, hey, I'm sorry to do this to you. But I am pregnant and it's yours, and you have a choice. You can leave right now and never talk to me again, and I'm completely okay with that, or you can be part of me and this child's life. There's no gray. It's either in or out. I don't want any in between crap.
Sure.
It's like, I look back now and I was like, man, I was ballsy.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
That was a healthy boundary to set, right? That was.
Yeah. And looking back now, I should have set more, but I guess we'll get there. And so the funniest part of this story is, in the background, the TV was on this National Geographic with a British commentator or narrator, and it was fish. And so we had just gotten really quiet. I broke the news, and it's quiet. You could hear a mouse dropping 5 miles away. It's pin drop quiet. And all of a sudden, the narrator on that show said, and the males released its sperm. Oh my God. I just wanted to die. I was just like, so this is my messy life, right? And he kind of reiterated in that conversation too, like, I never really wanted kids. I've got my little brother. That's all I really want. I said, listen, man, like I said, it's either you're in or you're out.
Right. I was going to say,
let me
already said we're past this. It's not.
I've already said we're in or out.
Pre-make.
Right. So fast forward 2 weeks later was my ultrasound. And by then he kind of came around and called me and said, hey, we got this. I remember he said it like this too. And I was just like, first red flag. Oh, yeah, we got this, girl. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You do you, and I'll try to be me. But I probably would have said it differently. And yeah, I'll be up there for the ultrasound and all that hunky-dory stuff that comes with it. So we get there, and we are, I think something stupid for lack of, for details or whatever. I think I had to drink like 40 ounces of water, because when you're that early on in pregnancy, they need all the help they can get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember laying on the table, and my mom actually came with us that day because she's my biggest cheerleader. She's the best grandma in the world.
Oh.
And I remember laying on the table, and them two were chatting, and I got the shirt up, they got the gel, they got the wand out, and I happened to look over at the screen, and I thought I saw what I saw. I was just like, oh, okay, I'll just wait a minute, and because the guy kind of moved the wand off and just took a deep breath, and he said, well, here we go. And he scanned over my belly, and he goes, well, look what we have here. And I looked over, and I'm like, God damn it, it was what I saw. There was not one baby. There was two.
Oh my, that's not where I thought you were going. I thought you were going.
Yeah, and I didn't want to tell you. I know. Yeah, I was just like, let's be as organic as we can and messy as So I looked over, and I saw two little dust bunnies there, and I was just like, well, here it is.
Wow.
And if I was to narrate my life, maybe that's the opening scene of my Sunday movie of my life. And it's like, and this was the beginning of the shit show
with the English narrator in the background.
Exactly. It's going to definitely be British. And so, where do I
Wow. There are so many emotions, right? At one time.
so many. And, at 24, I wasn't mature yet. Maybe some people are at 24. I wasn't. It's not that I was a big baby, but I wasn't who I am today, or
Sure, of
put it
course
that
not.
way.
I don't think many of us
It was,
are at that age.
yeah. um, and now, well, we'll get there in a minute, but, so yeah, that was the loneliest days of my life. I guess that's a soap opera, days of our lives. It was lonely. He worked 3 hours away. He had a decent job. He was saving money. We saw each other when he came up. We talked a lot on the phone. I knew his family.
Was his expression about as much as your expression? Was it just speechless? Was his
Oh yeah, I think so. And I think we just kind of rolled with the punches for a long time just because he thought the admirable thing to do was to stay with me and have babies and whatever. And, but I remember the feeling and during that pregnancy and, oh God, I got so ginormous and I'm not a big girl and I was huge. Um,
well, yeah, them twins.
so
Yeah.
that was hard, I was young and I went from being a single woman at 24 years old to a family of four in less than 8 months.
That's heavy.
That's very heavy. And I don't realize the weight of it until I really talk about it because it's just been my normal for, I mean, the girls, yeah, they're 20 years old now, 20 years. And so fast forward, they were born a little bit early. They were both perfectly fine and healthy. And I ended up staying with my parents until the girls were probably about, oh God, 6, 7 months old at the time. And then he had saved up enough money and bought a home. And we moved in. It was about 45 minutes away from our hometown, which is a nice buffer because it wasn't, everybody loves Raymond style where the parents are going to barge to the door at any given moment. So it was like, it was a nice buffer. It was a nice home. Um, and it was okay. Of course, he worked hard. He supported us. He supported his family. There was a roof over our head. There was meals on the table, except there was always something missing as far as the relationship or priorities. He was still young too. He's probably like a year and a half, 2 years older than me. And sorry, male listeners, I love most of you, but men really don't grow up and at the rate that women do. And partying,
Especially around the 20s. That's hard.
well, let's just give some men a slack. Yeah, in the 20s, it's like, oh God. And fast forward 4 years, we ended up having another son, and that was another hard pregnancy because I remember that night telling him, sorry, dude, I think you did it again. And sitting there, and this is the part that's fuzzy in my brain. I don't remember if it was late night. So it was either Conan O'Brien or a late night basketball game. And I remember sitting near him telling him like I'm pregnant again. And I remember he was just watching the TV the whole time and never grabbed my hand or hugged. So yeah, I just look at these TV emotionals like, oh, we're expecting or the we're pregnant and the hugs and the love. And I'm like, I never got any of that. Um, and because of that, because of his reaction of making me feel guilty, because it was my fault, right? He said, well, it's probably going to be two again, and it's probably going to be another girl. So again, all my fault.
Wow.
So yeah. So and I would go to all of my prenatals alone. And I remember that the OB at the time would say, all right, let's get a listen to this little treasure. Just like dreading it. It's like, what treasure? And I just wasn't there. I was just like, ugh. And then once we found out it was a boy, everything turned. So because he was happy it was a boy, I guess it lightened up me and that I could be happy and bond with my child. And again, he was a good dad. He loved his son. And over the years, we just grew apart to the point of so that was, okay, Matt was born in 2007. By 2011, we had our first hiccups. I thought that he was seeing somebody on me, and he was a heavy drinker. He did it kind of quietly. He still snuck out to do anything that he wanted to do at any time. He worked weekends. came home on Mondays and was so conveniently in a dart league. So it's like we didn't see him then. And then he worked he was just always working or gone. So when I say that I really raised these three kids alone, it's really not far off. I mean, he came by to, help pay bills and show face and all that stuff. But on like the meat and potatoes of it all, there was no substance. And it took a long time to realize that. And then I saved up the little money that I had and booked us a family cruise because I was just like, we need a vacation. This was back in 2015. So my girls were, what, 12 and Matt was 8. And that was the beginning of the end. Because on that trip that I saved up for, didn't even have a job saved up for it. He ruined it from alcohol and non-priorities. And so anyway, so I stayed 3 years later after that one incident. I stayed 3 years later before finally finding the wherewithal to just leave, just rip off that damn Band-Aid, find some semblance, find some, I don't know, courage, just get the hell out of Dodge. Like, this is going nowhere. I can't stand him.
Had you knew that where it was going?
Oh, yeah, because again, being with someone for 16 years with 3 children, there was never even an inkling of him asking to marry me. And not that that's the end all be all for most people, but it's just like I felt so unloved. I felt like I am a good mom. I put a meal on the table every night. I stay home. I don't leave. I don't. I'm a good person. I provide everything to make a really good, cozy home for these kids and for him and myself. And it's just like, at the end of the day, what was I getting back? Absolutely nothing. And I think what took me so long to leave the situation was probably financially. That was scary. How am I going to leave this situation and provide for 3 kids, provide for myself? And I'm not going to be able to go back into my culinary job because you have to be married to that schedule. How am I going to survive? And I'm not knocking down any retail workers or grocery store workers, but I was just like, I want nice things in this life. And how am I going to get there by just eking by with just a mundane, everyday, someone needs me job? So I bought a business and I bought that in 2016. It was a cleaning business that came with clients. And yeah, I'll say that got out of Dodge. Within a year of the business, I had been doing so good for myself that I was just like, this is it. Bought myself a truck, bought myself or found a rent because he wasn't budging. I suppose the house was in his name, which was fine. But being a mom with 3 pets and all that, first of all, a lot of people don't accept pets in the, if you're renting or whatever. And I was lucky enough and blessed that not only was I cleaning in my business, but I had another 9-to-5 job. I was working in a small kitchen Thursday through Saturday. And because I was a sucker for punishment on Fridays and Saturdays, I would clean all day, jump onto my restaurant job, and then I would clean up in the kitchen and then change my clothes and play bartender until 2 a.m. because messy, right?
Sure.
And I want it out.
Sure.
I want it out so bad at all costs. Yeah.
Did you ever have that awkward, uncomfortable conversation of, is there anything to salvage? Or did he just know because he already had one foot out the door and you were on, like, was it just a mutual, yep, I guess
it got really, so to this day, we don't speak. I choose my happiness over, he's got a lot of dark, I think, and undiscovered daddy issues and abandonment issues and persona issues. And I mean,
he was angry when you left.
No, not angry. In fact, I remember an incident that there's some kind of water that had spilled on my laptop and his cup was next to it. And I was just like, this is my work computer. This is my work laptop. And you left your cup there and it spilled. Oh, sorry, I'll buy you a new one. Kind of like, oops. I think he did it on purpose. I'll never know. And I remember that day we had a deck and I looked over the deck and it was summertime. So he had his shirt off and he was like scratching his chest, looking up at me. And I said, guess what? I said, here's what's happening. I found a place. And I'll tell you this out loud and for the whole universe to hear. You are not a person and I'm not yours. And after 16 years, he looked up at me and said, sorry, it didn't work out. And
Well, if that wasn't closure before, you kind of had the closure there, right? Oh my goodness.
but I remember, like, yeah, after our vacation, after that incident of him ruining so much then, and he was never really one to talk about things out loud, or I, he was always the one to brush it under the rug, proverbial rug, just kind of throw shit under there and whatever. Um, and I was the one that let it pile up because, confrontation, let's keep everything at bay and whatever. So if we ever had an implosion, it would just be a lot. So I remember after that vacation, we had come home, and instead of him saying sorry or being the admirable, like, man and owning up and being accountable for what he had done, the only thing he said was, I guess we'll have to sell the house. So that was his way of saying a roundabout sorry, or I really screwed up and we can't do this anymore. But let's not forget, I was stupid enough, and I say that with a little bit of grace now, but to stay 3 more years. Yeah, so I was just like, you know what? Your mentality is gross. Ugh, there's so much ick there. And, I'm very thankful for all that because he's not my person, wasn't my person. He gave me 3 beautiful kids. And
So back up really quick. When you say you're so thankful, what specifically, for the children or just the whole experience?
oh, the children. Yeah. I mean, and I always said, always said that I never wanted kids.
Mhm.
And there I am with, 2 at once. Surprise, surprise. And then my son, I think, the universe sets you up with certain things. I'm a believer of that now, and it took me a long time to figure that out. They say, oh, everything happens for a reason. The reason was I needed that lesson, and it took me a long time to realize that lesson was, it made me figure out who I was. Maybe not back at my 2018 self or my 2016 to 2018 self. I was still probably a little still immature as far as emotions, because you figure I had started this relationship when I was very young and didn't have the expansive knowledge to grow because it was such a closed container, quote unquote, relationship. It was just playing house, maybe. I mean, it just was nothing more than roommates after a while. And yeah, so when I left, I actually got a little rent right down the road from where he was, and things got ugly. And to this day, he still only talks to basically one of the children and maybe one and a half of the children. He doesn't really talk to one of the girls, which is really difficult to understand because they're twins.
For their weird his choice.
Probably both.
Yeah.
But as a parent, I always wonder, like, you are the parent. You have to try. You have to bend. You have to break as a parent. And I guess some people don't. Yeah. So that was the first 16 years. That was messy. And I'm thankful that it ended. And I just wish that I would have had the wherewithal and the bandwidth to do it a lot sooner than that. But I didn't. So that's my story, and I can't change it. I can't go back and fix things or back and look at things differently from a different lens because there was no lens. There was just one, maybe blinders on for a while. So I picked up 3 kids and the pets that we had at the time, and was lucky enough and blessed that back to my little bartending job. My boss, he had a rental property, so I got to stay there for a few years. In the meantime, met someone else. And that was
Were you ready for that? Were you ready for something like that?
So I met him 2 months after moving out of the first situation. But to be honest, we were under the same roof for years, probably not even together. So we had probably been broken up literally for 3 years. But still living under the same roof. So was it a quick exchange to do it that fast? Maybe. But if I say that I was kind of single under the same roof for 3 years, I'm like, well, maybe I gave myself some leeway just to kind of move on.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, right? I mean, what's logical when you're going through stuff? And
well, and it sounds like for so long you got so little that maybe just even receiving a little
some
more than
attention.
what you did. Yeah.
Right. I was getting some attention. And it was nice to have that feeling of love, what I thought was love again, and some semblance, um, so that was like October of 2018 that we met. And um, wasn't like this head over heels thing, but I really liked him a lot. And he had some red flags, as I think most people do, that I looked over because I think that's, can we just stop doing that? Can we just stop taking
Right.
red flags as a bouquet of flowers and being like, oh, it's okay. We'll change him here. He'll be fine. No, guys, listen, red flags, freaking red flags.
They definitely.
Doesn't make the people bad, but just if I could have taken a pause to be like, let me just slow down and really read you a little bit more.
When people hear you who they are, they're showing you
Yeah.
who they are. Yeah.
Yes. So, a year before we had met, he had experienced a huge trauma. And I'll just say it here. And if you need to put a trigger warning at the beginning of the episode, go for it. He had I'll spare it for time, the whole story. But basically, he found his nephew hanging in his garage.
Oh my God.
So yeah, and they were very close.
Mm.
And he was very upfront when we first met that this is something that he had been going through. And of course, that's nothing. I mean, yes, it is a red flag, but it's kind of an understandable kind of red flag. Like, I will cope with you and cope with me dealing with that as much as I can. And then he had gone through a divorce maybe a year or two before that. And he was a very, very heavy drinker. And
Just a cocktail that's just bad, and not, and maybe to no fault of his own, but still such a cocktail of, extreme circumstances to have to deal with.
And this lends back to, the beginning of our conversation with, me in the culinary world and me not being an addict to anything. How the heck, and my parents don't drink. I mean, my dad would buy a 6-pack and it would last all summer because he would just have one or two after mowing the lawn. So coming from, a fairly normal family, just my parents are still married. My parents don't drink. I have one sister, just this cookie cutter, little normal blue collar family. And I end up with two broken people that had just, problems with themselves, which lent to problems with alcohol. And it became my problem. I don't have a problem with alcohol, but I do because now I have an unhealthy,
Yeah. Do you think when you saw that, or did you think it's something, well, I can bring him out of that? Did you think?
Well, it's funny because I met him on Tinder, which is kind of, I know, I could go into that and just be like, ladies, don't go there either. If you're struggling, we'll stay offline. I will get into that in a minute too, but and it was out of desperado. It was kind of a friend being like, just go online. That's what everybody else is doing. Da, 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 da. So I did. And he was local-ish, but I didn't know him. And we met and, oh, this is funny too. Our second date, this lends into the podcast. Our second date we spent with his ex-wife's parents.
That's interesting.
It is.
Let's not just blow over that. That's very.
That is, yeah. So it is kind of hilarious. I kind of forgot about that little minute detail. So
first, as you're sitting through the date at all, were you like warning, or you're just kind of going with the flow?
Well, I live in a very small town. Okay, our town's probably about 2,500 people, so people. So our first date, we went out for dinner. And then I think it was 2 days later, I think it might have been the day later. Like he just was like, hey, I'm back in town. Can you meet up at such and such a place at such and such a time? So I said, sure. So we sat there, we're having a beer or whatever. And he looks over and he goes, that's my ex's father right there. And I said, oh, whatever. He just seems like an unassuming, cute, adorable little old man. And he goes, he really loves me a lot. So I'm going to go over there and talk to him. I said, okay, go. Like, whatever. So he did. And then he came over to talk. So the dad came over to talk to us. And I was just like, okay, a little awkward, but Christy, just grow up, just smile, nod, make conversation. It's okay.
I don't know. Wait, time out. Do you think that's a grow up moment, or do you think that's I'm gonna call this for what it is and maybe just see what
I look back now, it was freaking weird. Yeah, it was a little. Let's be honest. At face value, it was a little weird. But the weirdest part didn't happen yet because his wife met him there, and then she sees the ex and her husband, and then there's me, and then there's her, and she.
You can't make this up. This is like I'm watching.
No, no, it's just yeah. So I look back now, and I knew her from the grocery store because she was a checkout clerk, and I was just like, "Hi." Just like, what do I, it's such an awkward, like, holy crap, what is my life? But I was just like, this guy's okay. But I did notice after the next time we meet up, whatever, he liked his alcohol. Like, he liked his beer, but he liked the hard stuff too. And whatever. At this point, I'm just like not judging, but going back to the whole stupid Tinder thing, I almost put on my profile like no drinkers. But I didn't.
You.
I don't know. I think I took the chance just being like, I might really exclude meeting someone really nice, regardless of the problem, I was so adamant about making sure that no one was born in the same year as my first ex and didn't have the same name because guilty by association. Like, you just hate everybody with that name.
Yes.
It's just like, no. So yeah, so we started dating and it was fine. He had 2 daughters himself, and they came over to his house a little bit, and they had more of a relationship with him than my kids had a relationship with their dad. And there was red flags. So there was the drinking, there was the suicide, there was just life.
So skills are a big deal, right? And they're are a big deal when they're absent and you don't have those coping skills.
And then he took my son under his wing and taught him how to hunt and go fishing. And my son was only 11 at the time. It was nice to have a little bit of a father figure, and they bonded. And fast forward to 2020, March of 2020, let's go there, when the whole world shatters into 6 billion pieces and we go into lockdown. And this is probably about March, April-ish. And because of my business, self-employed, cleaning, rentals, the world's closed down, no one's renting. I kind of was a little scared, not knowing, am I ever going to be able to make money again on my own, or am I going to have to, like,
a lot of people felt that way.
I wasn't alone. Yeah. So he spent a lot of time with me at my little rental, and he had a beautiful home that he had built, and he was never there because of said incident with nephew. It was really haunting him and all this stuff.
And in that regard, you can't blame. I mean, of course, there's going to be those demons, but being able to.
Oh, absolutely. And literal demons.
Yeah. Sure. Working through it, coping is just a whole different ballgame.
And I think his heavy drinking when he was alone there opened up portals to whatever he saw, because he said he saw some demons or what have you. And I'm like, you sure you weren't sleeping? Are you sure, you sure you weren't taking anything more? But I have never experienced what he saw, and I will never, and I hope I never do. But I'm not going to ever take that away from him as far as discrediting how damaging and damning that was to him. But so 2020 came, and he's like, let's just move back to my home. I have a house that I built myself, obviously, and we can build 3 bedrooms downstairs. No, 2 bedrooms. Was it 2? Whatever it was. 2 bedrooms. We'll build a couple bedrooms, and we will buy the field across the street. A beautiful 7-acre, plush, lush, gorgeous flat field. Because he knew that that's what I was ultimately looking for, was a chunk of land so I could make these beautiful gardens and eventually put greenhouses on them, and put like a little, commercial kitchen out there, just a little shanty shacky shed where I could make pies and cookies and bread.
So at this point, you're wanting to do this? This is a decision that you're
at this point, I don't know what's coming up next. So I'm thinking, well, I don't know if I can pay rent. if I'm not getting paid, this was before like the help. This was before, and mind you, back then when I was trying to apply for unemployment, that was not a joke. That was really tricky for a lot of people, especially small business people.
Right.
But luckily the job that I had, I made a lot of money in the winter. Um, make hay while the sun's shining. Um, and I would also, um, save up for my downtime. So I would always have like a decent cushion to fall back on. So I wasn't really worried. I was just kind of looking out for I don't know where this world is going, don't know where I'm going. And of course there was red flags. But I, brushed them aside and thought, and it was all sweet. We can buy this land because you're so special to me. I just love you so much. Get you that land. I know how much this means to you. I know you want to garden. And
But was it like love bombing, or was it just his way
I
to
don't
cope
think
with
he knows how to. Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think it was too late to love bomb. I don't think he knows. I don't think he has the capacity to figure that out. Well, he is very narcissistic, and I know that word is thrown a lot around a lot, but he really is. And when you have narcissistic alcoholics, that's a whole other mixed breed of don't go there. It's just, and it's funny because the first one was a narc too, but in a whole different way. So I think I got the type A narc and type B narc, no specific order. And I say all this, and I'm not throwing either one of them under the bus, is to preface that I am not perfect at all. Um, but when you're dealing with such abstract personalities daily for almost 20 years, it's like, holy, who the hell am I? Who am I?
And I have heard it's almost by design that you're constantly questioning your existence or what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
Because I'm inherently like this creative, like do everything, like Martha Stewart type of attitude. Like I can do anything, I love to craft and I love all things arts and do it my own. And it's just like at some point, and I'm a visionary and a dreamer. They both they weren't. So it's just like any big idea that I had was just kind of squashed, like, meh. And I'm just like, it was always buzzkill.
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years of buzzkill, except for we acquire this land. I tried to acquire the land on my own, and most banks acquire a 35% liquid asset. And that just basically means if it's, $30,000 and you need to have 35% of 30,000 in cash, and then you mortgage the rest. So I was like, okay, which I actually at the time had money to do that, but I was just like, something told me not to do it. Because it would have kind of really depleted me in case work didn't pick back up.
Sure.
So it was the noble idea of the bank loan manager to say, hey, let's just roll it into his equity, and you guys can do it that way. You can borrow against his already existing mortgage.
Ouch.
So long story short, and anybody that's listening that knows anything about banking or mortgaging is going to come through the microphones or speakers and just slap me, and right now just proverbially slap me, because I signed those lines, and what I didn't realize at that exact moment is that I got rolled onto his mortgage debt and not the deed. So at that moment, he kind of got like apoplectic about like, just crazy, like, oh, I worked so hard. I paid my ex-wife off to get this house and keep this house, and now you're on it. And I'm just like, well, it was kind of your idea for me to come here.
So almost resentful.
Mm-hmm. I think he was pooping his pants a little bit, being like, oh no, like, oh shit, I got wrapped into this crap again with another woman. And so I think that when that land kind of went through and it was ours, it's kind of like the relationship took another turn, a little bit of a resentment. And at that point, that's when I started kind of opening my eyes, and went through the next year. So that would be 2021, and dug the garden of my dreams. And I just wanted to do the whole thing. And this lends to the example as he had his friend come over with the big tiller and plowed the patch that I had kind of drew up. And I said, double it. He's like, oh, that's too big. I'm like, double it. And so they double it. And he couldn't believe that I wanted, and it wasn't that, I mean, out of 7 acres of land, I think if this thing was like 70 square, 70 feet by 70 feet, I was lucky, but it was a nice sizable place to start. Had a beautiful garden. And I like to do all the cannings. Like I said, Martha Stewart, I like to do all my pickles and relishes and all that stuff to put up for the winter. And as winter progressed that year, I was just like, oh, what am I doing? Because, there's just there's in that narcissistic person's world that's drinking a lot, no one can do anything right. So I was subjected to a lot of criticism. I couldn't do anything right. I was basically um the breadwinner, because I was making good money in my business, and always, if we needed anything, it was on me. He paid the mortgage, he paid his insurance, he paid his gas, and I basically paid everything else as in lieu of, and that gets messy too when you kind of play tit for tat. Um, it was November of 2021 that I was home, and it was a cold night, and my son had gone down the street to help a neighbor. And I know it's a random thing, but I'm random and the show's messy. I was eating a big bowl of Jello. I remember that. And it's funny how when weird things happen, you remember like the little details.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I remember that I had already washed dishes. I had already done laundry. And had I been doing those two things, I wouldn't have heard what I heard. So I heard what I thought was help, like a labored help. I'm like, I went back and taken a few more bites of Jello because it's who I am. Because the windows are closed, I'm like, okay. TV wasn't on, by myself, very quiet afternoon. And then I hear it again. And I flew outside and looked under his truck, and he was pinned under his truck. The tire came down onto ran him over.
Oh my.
Yeah. Messy, Sarah, I tell you.
Yes. Goodness. So he hit a tire or something and it fell on him?
So let me get this story right. He was changing. Sorry, men who are listening, I am not auto mechanically inclined. He was changing. Did he pull out his drive shaft? I'm asking the men out there. Probably pull out his drive shaft. And the driveway was a little bit on a steep, just a little bit of a little steep. And I think he thought it was more level than it was, and didn't put a piece of wood, around the tire. And he tried to move out of the way, moved the wrong way, and it pinned him.
Oh my goodness.
So, he hurt. Left arm was, so now his left arm's up in the air, and the tire's like over his like left armpit chest area. And it was a cold afternoon, and I'm panicking. So I call 911. And if anybody has to ever call 911, you're already kind of frantic and crazy anyway. And this operator, God bless her, she was not cooperative at all.
Oh dear. See, that was my profession before. I was a 911 dispatcher for many, many years. So that makes me sad that you didn't.
He kind of was, but here's what happened. So I had to go and get a jack to release him from, getting squished. And at first I grabbed the little bitty one that you just have in a car. He goes, no, go get the other one. So I'm scrambling around. I don't know how to use this damn thing. So he's telling me how to, put it under the pumpkin. Again, it's like the middle of the axle. Is that like, again, not automatic inclined here, but that thing. So, line it up for there. While I'm all trying to do this, the operators like asked me like, ma'am, this, ma'am. And I said, excuse me. I'm like, but you have to here's what's happening. I have to jack this truck up and get him out. And she was kind of asking me these questions, and I was just like, ma'am, just be quiet. Like, just, I appreciate your help, but I can't. I need to get him out of here because we're kind of rural. I hate that word, rural. And actually, people really arrived quicker than I anticipated. They were there within like 10 minutes, which is kind of decent. So long story short, jack up the truck and yank him out, or let him scoot back over. And I remember that the operator had said one more thing to me before I left the phone call. And when I told her, yes, help has arrived. And she told me not to feed him anything. I said, okay, I know that's part of her job, but I'm like, I'm really sure he's not craving a cheeseburger right now. But anyway,
interestingly enough, and not to defend her, especially,
And I get it. I completely get it.
but there is actual questions they have to read off of a sheet. Some departments. We were old school. We didn't have pre-made questions, but some departments did where they had to just give you the instruction of what.
Poor woman. I never called to complain about her because I was just like, it is what it is. She did her best with what she knew and whatever. So they take him to the hospital. Let's fast forward.
Being mindful not to feed him any cheeseburgers, so that
I didn't feed him a damn thing. No, I actually remember I threw a sleeping bag on him because I had just ran into the basement, found the first thing I could see is a sleeping bag, and I brought it back outside. So find him at the hospital. He's got this sleeping bag on him, and it's full of gravel from the driveway, and there's big boulders all over this ER room. Nothing was broken. He suffered a lot of nerve damage. His arm was pretty much what I thought was just crippled or paralyzed or immobile or never being used again. So he was out of work from November all the way until July.
Oh, wow. So a lot of issues come with that as well, right? A lot of
oh my God, because
the ego's bruised along with the arm, along with
the ego's bruised, the alcohol got ramped up. The weight,
I'm sure he's in pain, right? The pain is
he's in pain, and he was taking a lot of ibuprofens and Tylenol around the clock, and he was a complainer anyway. So this, I get it, but at some point it's just like, just freaking stop. Just everything was a complaint. And there was a lot of unanswered questions for a while. So I get it. It didn't really help the relationship at all. So that was like November of 2021. So by, so that was November of 2021. He didn't get back to work until July 2022. And in that, in that pocket, in those 7-8 months, I was still working. So,
still working, I still holding down the fort,
and still holding down the fort.
All having to take whatever the brunt of his pain, emotional and physical, and whatever you can with that, I'm sure was not fun. And you start to see the true colors, I'm sure.
Oh, those true colors were flying everywhere.
Talk a little bit about how do you start to see okay, I'm recognizing this for what it is, and where do I go from here?
Right. So there was a lot of time. So like I said, I moved in 2020. By maybe 2021, I was just walking around the place being like, I don't want to be here. I won't be here next year. I won't be here next year. It's kind of like a manifestation, I guess, and looking back in retrospect now, like, I don't want to be here in a year. I hate this place. This isn't going to work out. And of course, because of my nature and because I had already been in a 16-year relationship that was crap, that's all I knew. That's all I knew was to just put things aside and let it go, because this too shall change, right? Like, I can change him, or he'll get better, or this has to end, or whatever. And it didn't. And the more I just kind of progressed, I was just like, my garden of 2020, thankfully, was my solace. It was, sitting down into the basement in March, April, May, still cool up here in New England. And I had my light tables on my seedlings, and I'm transplanting, and I moved a picnic table into the basement, and it was just like, it was my safe place to be creative and have something hopeful to look for, which was the garden.
And a necessary distraction as well, I'm sure.
A very necessary distraction. Yeah. And in all of this, so we've got the dynamics of my 3 children and then his 2 daughters, and his 2 daughters didn't necessarily have a great relationship with him. So there was while he's home with this dead arm, and I'm working my ass off and doing all the things, and you've got all these interwoven family dynamics and the complaints daily. I'm just like, I'm about to tap out. So, so that was, okay, we're in 2023 now. I'm like losing my mind here. Again, my mind's very messy too.
I'm right there with you.
So I know. So I get through my gardening season, and I'm just kind of like, holy shit, like, what am I gonna do with this? What am I gonna do? and I'll just fast forward. I think by November 12th, which is almost a whole year ago, I got the hell out. I got the hell out. I got a storage unit back in July, which no one knew about, and I was moving boxes quietly. I was
Okay, so
anticipating
this was an escape of
preempted.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So not
And it wasn't
like one explosive event that made it just end quickly. It was
no,
this.
I think, yeah, I had to. I think I was slow and methodical in the messiness of it all. Um, because, it's amazing how much crap you collect as a human being in just a couple years. And I'm just like, oh God. So I got a storage unit, started moving stuff out, and thank God, because those are really hard to come by here too. And that is the segue into the next messy pile that I am currently in, is that because I was stuck to his mortgage debt, and because of the inflation, and because of the low inventory on housing, not just where I am, but everywhere. I live in a place that's heavily Airbnb because I live in a ski resort town. So most places only rent short term, not long term. So there goes that. And the price has tripled since I had last rented, just maybe 5 years ago from today. Um, so it's not that I can't afford rent. If I went out and tried to afford today's rent in the area, I would never be able to have a mortgage.
Sure.
Like if I think about saving, whatever. And because I'm in that precarious mortgage pickle, I tried even getting the smallest loan I could try to get to just get a fixer upper and whatever. And they're like, no.
Right.
I've heard the word no so many times that if I ever hear a yes, it'll be a freaking miracle. But it'll happen because
Sure.
in this last year alone, since November 12th, 2022 was the day I took my stuff and I didn't look back. And I was blessed enough to have a friend who said, I have 3 rooms that are empty. Stay here. And that's currently where I still am. It's been almost a year and it's a beautiful thing.
That's really one of the messiest stories I've ever heard. And it just feels like it compounded and compounded and compounded. So where would you say now, especially in this last year, is it, is it focusing on Christy now? Is it,
big time.
yeah.
I finally know who I am. And what that is I am worth so much more, and I've added tax. I am so much more valuable
That's a huge statement. That's a huge statement because there's so many layers to that. And one of the layers, I think, being because you're confident in who you are, you know what you might want and what you know you don't want, right? And so that already,
what I don't want is already outweighing what I do want. I have found such a zen place in the last year of clarity and kindness to myself, forgiveness, and hold space and grace for myself,
sure.
and know that this too shall pass. So I know, like, right now, I am in like the biggest story chapter of my life, meaning like this is what I needed to get into to catapult me to the greatness that's coming.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's been a huge growth year where it's like I give no shits. I don't know if I can swear in here, but already have, but I I don't worry much. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just such a liberating experience that I finally figured out how to love myself. And I don't think I ever did.
And it may be more stress, but it's a different kind of stress, right? When you have that, day-to-day angst when you're living with someone who it brings a whole different dynamic, that brings its own stressor. And of course, being out on your own again and doing all those things, but it's a different kind of stress. It's stress that you almost welcome and would gladly treat.
Yeah, it is a welcome stress because
Yeah.
we laugh so much every day. Like, and since I've been here, since she's taken us in, her daughter, who just turned 21, has an 18-month-old baby, and they've been living with us also since like February, I think. So she went from an empty nest to a house busting at the seams.
Full house. Yeah.
And it's a full house and it's a lovely house and we have so much fun. There's probably not one day that goes by that we don't collectively belly laugh. She told me that I should start stand-up comedy because it's just who I am. I like to find deprecation in everything and laugh at everything. And
Well, and what I always say on this podcast is we have to laugh through the mess, right? And it's not that we're laughing at you, we're laughing at the situation. I have compassion and I totally understand the bottom floor, but at the end of the day, you've got to find some humor just to get you through whatever that circumstance.
have to, because if you are not laughing, you're crying. And please make fun of yourself. As more as I can be the advocate now to like,
Don't take yourself so
laugh at
seriously.
yourself. Don't
Yeah.
no, because guess what? We are all in the same spinning rock in the middle of freaking nowhere in space. There's no escape. The final destination is death. We're all heading there. And how you play the game. And I hate being morbid like that, but it's just like, we're not getting out of here alive. Stop taking yourself so seriously.
No, but I do
like-
kind of see why you might have been given the advice to do stand up. That's quite funny. So then from that, let's segue.
Eating. Yeah.
Let's segue into you are also and took on the endeavor to start a podcast. So what does
I
that
did
look like?
because I am always so thirsty for creativity, whether it's with food or anything artsy fartsy, anything that I can grow, or I just love to have my hands on something.
Well, and I love the
think that
title.
was
The title of your podcast.
thank you.
is
So
great.
the title of my podcast, it was a kind of stumbled upon it. It's called Hold My Shovel. The Hold My Shovel, not the Hold My Shovel podcast. And it came from the premise of the expression "Hold My Beer."
Yeah, no, I love it.
Usually, if you see the videos of "Hold My Beer," someone's about to do something or have done something stupid or made a bad choice or decision, and
I all relate to that.
Thank you. And that's why I love your podcast is a lot like mine in the sense of bring the messy, bring the crazy, bring those crazy stories, because at the end of the day, we are all collectively a pile of choices that we've made that were sometimes ours or many times not ours to make. And
Right, we found
our
realization. Yeah.
Yeah. So the premise of Hold My Shovel is that we are given, or daily we are given, piles of BS to navigate through. And you have to dig it, climb over it, go under it, around it. But you have to figure it out. Yes, figure it out. And on Hold My Shovel, I want you to stop digging and start talking. And there's nothing off limits. It can be as messy as my story. It can be, college stories, the time you got arrested, the time that you got, whatever the case may be, the crazy person in your town that you taunted. I don't know. But
Just a chance
those
to
are all
sit with it. And that's
just chance to sit with it. Yeah. And I came across the class, the podcasting class, or program to learn more. And I am not looking back. I've met so many wonderful people so far.
And that's what I say. I have said many times, the podcasting community in and of itself is such a just kind and nice and gracious community. And they bring you in. And all I find myself wanting to do is just paying it forward, because they have just the openness and honesty and just the way that I've been welcomed, especially. I mean, it's just, it's a really, really nice outlet to be yourself, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. And, I think
Come as you are.
And, we'll be there for you. We'll figure it out. And I just think,
and it's
that's
okay.
great.
And just get rid of the word perfection, get rid of the, the idealistic life or how you think it's going to go. Throw caution to the wind, fly by the seat of your pants, give no worries.
It's real people talking about real things.
Yes.
And that to me, I think people are craving that. They're wanting that so much, that genuine, the vulnerability, because I think, we are similar
conversations we're missing out on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, whether you're listening to the podcast driving or maybe we're in your back pocket right now, it's just kind of like taking friends for the ride. It's just you're listening to something, and I hope my story didn't scare away people.
No, I don't think. I think somewhere people are going, "Oh my God, that was me." So I think people are saying, "Oh my gosh, I felt that," or "Oh my, I've been in that situation," and I think it's relatability.
And I think if I can lend any advice to any young woman out there, or a man, or whatever human that's in a situation, young, and in my case, stay-at-home mom for 8 years. That feels trapped, find some way to put some money away, find some way to do a side hustle, find some way out, whether it's what you have to do to live somewhere else for a little while, like I'm doing. Have no shame in protecting your own sanity. Have no shame in finding yourself. Have no shame to admit that you have been stuffed in a box and that you've finally climbed out.
Mm-hmm.
And give yourself the grace and give yourself the, what's a great word? Give yourself the validation that you will never, ever, ever climb into that box again.
Yeah.
And
what I like to say is find your strength through the mess and you will come out of it.
Yes. And I think if I hadn't gone through all of this crappy mess, that I wouldn't be who I am in just a short year's time. It's like a light switch went off in me, like just this beautiful, I don't know. It's like I'm connected to like this higher being, whether it's the universe or I don't know. It's like bubbling lately. It's just like something's just gravitating me towards something huge, something big. I don't know what it is yet. And I'm just pushing myself every day to see it, just, I don't want to not see it.
No, I think that
I'm too bold for that. So yeah, I like
always
that, pushing the limit for myself. Yeah.
No, that's great.
And be you.
Thank you so much, Christy. This has been a fantastic episode. But you're definitely, I feel like you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I so appreciate
time.
Yeah. This. And
Thank you.
Let's have you on again after you start your podcast and
yes,
see what
yes,
how it's going.
I keep saying
a full circle.
Yeah, I keep saying to the few women that I've interviewed so far too is to schedule me out in about a year. I know it sounds like a long time, but a year goes by very quick.
Sure, and a lot can happen in a year. It's more media material to talk about.
I think so. I think it's like the progressional marker of growth and maybe becoming unmessy. Maybe by that time I'm completely. Maybe by that time I've had time to like towel up and wipe off the mess.
I love that. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. If you don't mind, if you'd head on over to wherever you listen to your podcast at and subscribe, maybe leave me a review. I would totally appreciate that. If you'd like to be considered to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out to me at everythingsmessy@gmail.com. You can also find me on social media at Everything's Messy Podcast on Instagram. I'm also on X, which was Twitter, at Everything's Mess, and Facebook at Everything's Messy Podcast. Once again, I'd love to hear from you in any capacity and anything that you'd like to share with me. Thanks again for listening.